C, 2013 budget amendments. Jamie?
Okay, the two amendments in front of you, the first one, 2013-17, this is basically just movement of monies within the budget line items, so just to cover for the ambulance dues, memberships, and training, we will be increasing that amount to cover more of the training since more of it's going into that section, along with decreasing the amount in the fire department dues, memberships, and trainings to offset that. Resolution number 2013-18, this is just appropriation from the general fund regarding a possible purchase of a public works truck. And this will be taken from the general fund for you guys to discuss.
I'll move to approve resolution number 2013-17.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's over. It's
Oh, you're right, sorry.
It's okay. Supervisor Wolf,
Yes.
Supervisor Bansky,
Yes.
Supervisor Laska,
Yes.
Chairman Merrick,
Yes.
Supervisor Fisher.
Yes.
Motion approved.
And on to number 2, a second budget amendment for $50,000 for capital outlay for an additional public works vehicle.
Oh, I 50. That would be 50,000, sorry.
Question.
Yes.
Public works vehicle, would that be a snowplow?
Yeah.
Okay, we do have $35,000 carried into that already. And I cannot support pushing $50,000 more in that area. We talked about one truck, this would open the door for 2 trucks, possibly bought at the right price. My feelings are that this is a poor time to shop for trucks. In the event we would need more money to purchase snowplows, May and June would be a more appropriate time, and at that time we could address additional funds.
Is there a motion? I would make a motion that we approve the budget amendment as it stands.
I'll second so we can continue discussion.
I think Supervisor Laska may very well have a valid point. I believe the purpose for putting this in front of us is if an opportunity should arise. We have had some talk a bit about the vision for a number of years of purchasing additional equipment. I think this would simply have that in place should the opportunity arise. I mean, at this point in time, I think we would need to regroup to authorize that expenditure. So I'll support the motion to include that sum of money so that we do have the flexibility if an opportunity arises that we want to avail ourselves of. Unlikely though it may be.
Brian, I might be on board with you, but I don't subscribe that if we were to approve this, that we have any oversight as to type of truck, when it's purchased, or any of those details. The money would be there, it'd be available for the resource, would be allocated, and be purchased without any further discussion by the board would be my take on it. And that's one of the apprehensions that I have about putting the money aside, is I'm basically saying, yes, here's 50,000. I don't have then any say as a supervisor, is this a really nice pickup truck, or is it a plow truck, or is it a log truck? That's the challenge that I have, is there's no language here that comes back and doubles that back to give us that safety.
What is the, and I appreciate where you're coming from, and I'm inclined to agree with you, what is the basis for your opinion then that there'd just be $85,000 available for somebody to spend? What's the basis that you think somebody can just go out and spend that?
We, in our ordinances, we would have given consent to the expenditure of this money. By that, the chair then has the discretion, because he has the authority of the board to spend this money on that vehicle, and he would not need to come back to us. He could literally buy the pickup truck, what have you, whatever it is, and we would not have any oversight of that. Now, I'm not saying that it's not a trust issue, it's not a thing. I think the way we did this past truck, although we had to do a special meeting, and I get it that can be inconvenient. I've raised concern about that in the past because it is tough to plan a schedule, so I'm not talking out of school there, but I think that process allowed us to evaluate the type of truck, the value of that truck, and ultimately we placed a value on that truck, and it sold for a heck of a lot more, which speaks to a little bit to Mike's comment. So there, in order for me to support it, there'd have to be some kind of a way for us to pull that back and say, hey, I don't think we should buy a 2000 plow truck for $85,000. And there'd be nothing that would prevent the chair from acting in that way. And please understand me, I am not stating that the chair would act that way. I don't believe he would. Factually, video's running. But I think we have a duty to think about that for our constituents.
I think just because the money's there, Joe, that doesn't indicate that, but I would support an amendment to that motion saying that we would come back and meet on any specific vehicle. But when we met here, authorized $35,000 for the purchase of the third patrol truck. It was specific to that $35,000. And there's, I don't think there's anything that would allow any of us to spend that money. And I have no intention of doing it without board approval.
I guess the comment, I understand, appreciate where you're coming from, and I don't want to belabor this, but I'd be interested even at some point in time, what part of the ordinance you think empowers this chairman or any other one to go out and spend that amount of money, but I agree with your general concern. I guess my approach to this, and the reason I would support this, or even we get into next year's budget, something similar to that, these budget amendments have to be passed by 2/3 of the entire board, not those present. So that means it takes 4 votes to approve a budget amendment. My concern is if an opportunity would arise, we can't even have that meeting perhaps called on short notice to authorize the expenditure of the money without doing the budget amendment. And then we've got to have 4 votes to do that and everything. I think this just gives a little more flexibility to move it. I mean, I would certainly support some clarifying language or even a separate motion that money cannot be expended without approval of the board, if that's your concern.
That if that language were to be added into this, I could support establishing the fund. That's a wise move. It's not spending the money, it is merely moving the money from our right pocket where it is undesignated. You could have a board spend it on anything, moving it to the left pocket, which means it is identified for a specific expense, Doesn't mean that we're going to spend it, it means that we could. I could support that kind of a.
Here's just a question or suggestion to keep this clean and for people to think about. On our agenda, item 3, we're on 3C, sub double I or sub 2, is this budget amendment. Could we not, if we're inclined to do it, and maybe there still isn't the will of the board to do it, but to do this cleanly, it would take 2/3, and then when we get to the next item, which is purchase of snow plowing equipment that's listed on our agenda for discussion and possible action, could we not then entertain the motion that you're contemplating, which would require specific authorization of the board to spend the money? Would that be a way to approach it cleanly?
I'd be okay with approaching it that way.
Okay, is that okay, Edgar?
Yes, it is.
Well, then I think we've got a motion, a second, further discussion, but a motion, a second to approve resolution 2013-18.
Anything further? Roll call.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Chairman Merrick?
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf?
Yes.
Supervisor Bansky?
Yes?
Supervisor Laska?
No.
Motion approved.
And on to D, purchase of snowplow equipment. And I think Supervisor Bansky, then we'll take up your language that any purchase of additional patrol truck or trucks would be approved by the board prior to any purchase. And if you'd like to make a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we have now $85,000 designated in our budget to acquire snowplow equipment, and that any purchase of that equipment should be approved by the town board prior to its purchase.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Question for a second. If we're looking at 2 trucks, have we thought about where we're gonna be parking these trucks? And maintenance and all that good stuff, all of a sudden we're up to 4 trucks.
There's, once we clean out the sheds and start storing equipment properly, there is adequate room in there right now for even 4 trucks, and perhaps up to 6.
I don't know if you've got to recall the vote or not.
Yeah, we'll recall the vote since it was interrupted.
Oh, you want me to read it back?
Yeah. Go ahead and read back the motion.
Sure. Supervisor Bansky moved to approve the purchase of snow plowing equipment with the purchases of the truck to come to a board meeting for approval prior to purchase.
Seconded by Supervisor Fisher.
Anything further? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Nay.
One opposed? Motion carries.